right now the United States is looking at a world in which it is highly dependent on China, Russia, and other countries for 50 different critical raw materials, and has to strengthen both the sourcing of those materials, as in the production, the mining of them, and the processing of those materials into critical parts for defense and aerospace and other industries.
Hello and welcome to Independence Avenue Media. I'm your host, Iya Meor-Mishvili, and I have the pleasure of speaking with Matthew Murray today. Mr. Murray is a former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. He's currently the chairman of the advisory board of Velta Holding, and he also teaches at Columbia University as an adjunct professor. Secretary Murray, thank you very much for being with us today.
It's my pleasure.
We'll talk about many things related to minerals, especially rare earth minerals. And I do really hope to get an overview from you for the viewers, exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about this topic. But before we get to that, I would very much like to get your thoughts on this idea that you talk about and write about often, which is the economic statecraft, and how it fits into rare earth minerals that we'll be talking during the interview. So what is it? What do you mean in this concept?
So economic statecraft is different from traditional diplomacy or traditional commercial diplomacy because it endeavors to combine all the tools in the U.S. government toolkit into one set of policies and initiatives. And by that I mean it includes straight diplomacy, but it also includes a role for the private sector. It includes a role for arms of the U.S. government that engage in public investment, such as the Export-Import Bank and the International Development Finance Corporation. It includes a role for economic sanctions, both as a carrot and a stick for conduct. And so economic statecraft is more ambitious and tries to involve all the U.S. government departments and agencies that have a role in foreign economic policy in one whole of government approach.
How would you connect this concept that you just described to the deal that the United States and Ukraine signed not too long ago?
Yes, I do think that this project, this deal, which is ended in the result that they've formed a new U.S. Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund, is an exemplary form of economic statecraft on the part of both the United States and Ukraine. And what it does differently and how it innovates is that it, first of all, it seeks to transform the relationship between the United States and Ukraine by focusing on economic security as a key component of national security. And the structure of this deal, this agreement, is to basically bring in all forms of diplomacy, investment, private sector participation, civil society participation, economic reform and modernization, and roll it into one initiative where the U.S. and Ukraine will be able to develop a key resource, namely critical raw materials, that has previously been undeveloped or not developed at scale. And while doing that, this agreement will form a cornerstone or a building block of a new pathway towards peace between Russia and Ukraine. The idea, as it's explained by Secretary Bessent and by now Prime Minister Yulia Severdenko, is that this joint and mutual commitment in developing Ukraine's critical raw materials will create a sort of a mutual basis for economic growth and prosperity that benefits the citizens of the United States and the citizens of Ukraine, and acts as a deterrent to future military aggression by Russia. And so this initiative has all the promise and potential of a bold economic statecraft innovation. Now, more globally, yeah, what it does is it makes a statement that where critical minerals have often been a driver of conflict and war, this vision is to convert the development of critical raw materials between two democratic nations into a source of stability, peace, and conflict prevention. And so the U.S. Ukraine deal could indeed serve as a model for U.S. engagement with other parts of the world in developing this sector. And of course, one of the benefits to the United States is it will position the United States to compete with China more effectively. And that is one of our national security objectives in carving out this area of cooperation with Ukraine and with other countries. Right now, the United States is looking at a world in which it is highly dependent on China, Russia, and other countries for 50 different critical raw materials, and has to strengthen both the sourcing of those materials, as in the production, the mining of them, and the processing of those materials into critical parts for defense and aerospace and other industries.
So this deal is not just commercial, strictly commercial in its nature, but you said that it can be used as a model for other countries, as well as will provide a sort of security for Ukraine. Is that what you said?
That's right. No, that's right. It's not strictly commercial, although the role of the private sector is key to the success of the enterprise. But it has a policy set of policy objectives that include stability, peace, conflict prevention, but also helping foreign countries such as Ukraine modernize their they're not only the critical raw materials industry itself, but all the legal infrastructure that surrounds that industry and is there to help promote foreign direct investment in that industry.
Mhm.
And so, another benefit of this agreement is that it will uh, place priority around making sure that the regulations, the geological data, the anti corruption elements of the regulatory, of the legal and regulatory structure that is designed for Ukraine to draw in foreign investment is all upgraded and modernized. The role of the private sector is also critical. This uh, signing of this agreement acts as a catalyst to attract smart money, long term patient money, risk capital that will take another look at Ukraine because both governments are committing their public resources and trying to create the conditions in which these investments in this industry are both um, efficient and secure and have a level of political risk insurance in them.
So it basically will improve governance
Yes,
in
it will. It
Ukraine.
will act as an accelerant to continue governance reforms that are already underway in Ukraine, and that is already in evidence. A couple weeks ago, the Rada passed in its second reading a new law on the formation of public-private partnerships, which will increase the transparency and make it more easily make the regulatory uh, uh, guidelines for how you do what is known as a PPP, a public-private partnership, much more predictable, accessible, and transparent for all participants. The other example of recent reforms is they have gone ahead and started to declassify the information around the data of the geology of where these critical raw materials lie in Ukraine. So that process has begun. There's much more reform that needs to happen. So, for example, the geology needs to be digitized and made available to everybody because markets function best based on good information.
And
But
transparency.
um, again, these are reform actions and steps that have been accelerated by the signing of this agreement and the beginning of the implementation of this agreement.
One question that always comes up in the context of Ukraine investments, economy, is always, well, often, I should say, not always, perception of corruption. So, do you think this deal will help Ukraine both change that perception and image in those groups of investors that still have it? And do you think this will help Ukraine to implement some of the good practices that would prevent corruption or limit it to maximum level possible?
Well, that's a very good question, and let me address it in the following way. First, Ukraine has to be commended and supported for their efforts to continue to fight corruption in Russia at the same time. They've been doing that now for 3.5 years, and I've participated in several initiatives to um, implement major anti corruption reforms, both by building stronger institutions, passing better laws, and following best practices for prevention of corruption. And so, in that context, this agreement, again, is an asset because this agreement will focus reform efforts on a key sector. The best anti corruption reform takes place sector by sector. And so this is an area which has been neglected, I think, from the point of view of the government of Ukraine in terms of both development, regulatory modernization, and anti corruption. And now there will be, I think, a whole of government effort on the part of the government of Ukraine to make sure that this is a very transparent sector and that the signals that are sent to major private sector foreign direct investors are very clear and that it's understood that they will get their money out on very favorable terms. And I've seen, not only through, for example, the passage of this new law on public private partnerships, but in discussions that I held when I was at the Ukraine Recovery Conference in Rome 2 weeks ago with key government officials, including Prime Minister Severenko and now Minister of Economy Alexei Sobolev. I've seen that they are very committed to implementing the agreement on the Reconstruction Investment Fund. They want to operationalize it, and they are trying to put all the resources and tools that are available from the government behind this agreement, including, most importantly, political will to make those reforms happen.
Let's talk about the minerals themselves now. Earlier in the conversation, you mentioned that there are about 50 minerals that U.S. considers as critical to its national security.
Right.
And how many out of those 50 does Ukraine have? And do we know where these mineral mines are located?
Well, the number that is frequently cited is that Ukraine has at least 20, if not more, of the minerals that are critical to United States economic security. And they're as to where they are located, many of them are located in the region that we operate in, which is the Kirovograd region. And when I was at the Ukraine Recovery Conference 2 weeks ago, I got the opportunity to meet with the governor of that region. And he told me that three of the top minerals on the U.S. list, including not only titanium, but also graphite and lithium, are located in that central region of Ukraine. And of course, there are other parts of Ukraine now occupied by Russia, unfortunately, that also have these minerals. And so they're widely dispersed. Some of them are more sort of secure than others. and many of them are not yet developed and explored, right? So if you look at the map, what you see is um, a significant amount and volume of critical raw materials that need to be um, understood in terms of where they're located, how they can be produced, and then how they can be scaled. And then, very importantly, Ukraine needs to be not only producing these minerals, but processing them, because that is the most important level at which we need to be more competitive with the Chinese as democracies. And so, yeah, so the there's a lot of exploration work yet to be done, but there are projects on the books in graphite, lithium, and titanium in the Kirovograd region at this as we speak.
There is a big controversy over do we even know where some of these mines are located, and I'm not, of course, referring to the ones that are already identified and operational, but what are the maps that we're guiding ourselves, or the U.S. is guiding itself when we talk about Ukraine's rare earth minerals mapping?
Yeah, so
Is
I
there
think there are two.
something? Mhm.
Yeah, there are two different uh, lenses through which to look at the that question. The first is that, generally speaking, the data that's available needs to be updated. Generally speaking, it's Soviet era data, and it needs to be not only upgraded but you know updated as well, and then put into some digital format so that these questions don't even occur. Right? This is fundamental to making this new market work. And as I said before, markets work or don't based on good information. And so this is a threshold issue. Everybody is seized with it right now. The European Union, it should be mentioned, is being very helpful in this respect, in that they are funding efforts to both declassify and digitize the data. And so there's progress is being made, and I don't think of that. I think of that as a solvable issue. It may take some time and resources to do it, but it's very solvable.
Does the minerals deal have any language in it on this particular topic to help Ukrainians identify where these minerals are located? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly contemplates the need to do that, but it doesn't commit to any specific steps. I think it's actually a subject of a lot of negotiation right now. What do we do about this data question? But I think it's being approached, as many of these questions are, in a spirit of a good faith and cooperation and collaboration. The teams working on this from both governments, from both the government of Ukraine is guided by the new prime minister, Yulia Severenko, and the new minister of economy, Alexei Sobolev, and the U.S. team is guided by the Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bessent, and the Development Finance Corporation, are all immersed in making this work from the data point of view and from the project point of view.
And now on the actual extraction process. So let's say data is available. We have digitized maps of what's where. Um, what is the process like after that? So it's identified, and then, and the reason why I'm asking this question is every time you hear or read about how long it takes,
Right.
the timeline varies from, you know, from a couple of years to up to 18, 20 years to develop some of this.
Yeah.
So what's up from your understanding? What is the process like after the minerals are identified?
Well, let me first put on a different hat, which is the hat that I wear as chairman of the board of an operational titanium company based in the Kirovograd region called Velta. Velta has been producing titanium since 2014 and owns 2% of the global supply of titanium feedstock and supplies the global and U.S. market with this feedstock already. So here's an example, titanium, of an already operational company that can scale up its production. And I should mention, in the course of our business planning around how to expand our production in Ukraine, we've discovered that we have other minerals in our mineral bed that include hafnium and zirconium derivatives. And both of those minerals are in high demand from different suppliers than we now supply, including the nuclear industry. And so when the discussion is around when can these projects be launched, we're already in operation, and we want to be a flagship that demonstrates the win-win dimension of this U.S. Ukraine economic partnership, because we want to just expand on our existing operation, and then we want to become vertically integrated by doing more processing of the titanium feedstock into metals that can be used by the U.S. defense and aerospace business. There are other ongoing projects which are a little bit further, in further need of development than Velta's titanium project. One of them is a project in the graphite industry, and it's being managed by a group called BGV in Ukraine. And they signed an MOU with the EBRD, with the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development in Rome, around doing more exploration. Okay, so that project is moving forward. And then the government of Ukraine has also announced that they're going to auction a lithium deposit. And so, yes, it's going to take some time, but the U.S. and Ukraine governments are both committed to getting 3 projects done or launched before the end of the year in titanium, in graphite, in lithium.
What are these minerals used in? We often hear
Yeah.
everybody's heard about titanium, everybody's heard about graphite and others, but why are they so important? And does the U.S. have them inside the United States? Is it essential for
Right.
the U.S. to get them from somewhere else?
Well, I mean, the question that you're asking is a question about why the United States has developed this vulnerability in the first instance. What has occurred in our economy that has created a vulnerability across 50 different minerals? And so the answer to that is that we do have some of them underneath the ground here. We've been processing others, but generally speaking, the economics of the mineral business have not been very favorable in the United States because of the highly regulated nature of this business. The licensing, the permitting, the environmental compliance, and the not in my backyard phenomenon, right? And so over a period of 30 years, really, the U.S. government has in effect not addressed the underlying structural impediments to better development of resources, both by pulling them out of the ground and processing them here. Now, this administration has taken a decisive turn in that direction. And so not only have they launched this innovative form of economic statecraft with Ukraine, but they have an executive order that is devoted to spurring development domestically in the United States of many minerals, and doing so with a whole of government approach and with expanded authorities for accelerated development of these minerals, right? So your question about why are they so important? Well, some people call critical raw materials the new oil. That's how they're viewed, and that's because they're in demand for defense and aerospace. They're also in demand for electronic vehicles and other for the batteries for electronic vehicles. They're in demand for consumer electronics. My iPhone uses titanium, right? Um, so, uh, and the this has become uh, a front page issue in the last couple of months because China has begun to withhold certain rare earths, which are a subcomponent of critical raw materials. They're not, it's important to keep the terminology straight. Critical raw materials are this list of 50, and they're defined as critical because of weak supply chains. Rare earths have a different, are in a different category, and they're kind of composite minerals that are especially used for batteries. Okay, and China has begun to withhold the export of them in retaliation to the tariffs that are being imposed. So the but it's all these minerals, including rare earths, are needed for modern industries that depend on light, carbon, or light and stronger metals that depend on these rare earths for batteries.
It's fascinating. I wish we had time to talk more about China, but maybe some other time we'll go into that.
Yes.
But to wrap this up, to stay on Ukraine, what is it? And this is my last question to you. Is there anything you can identify, or is there anything that you have on your mind that Ukraine needs to do in order to really make this deal a success?
They're already doing a lot, which is to say they have a team that they pulled together to actually negotiate the agreement in the first place. And they did a very good job of negotiating a deal which is equitable, which is just, and which will benefit citizens of Ukraine in the short, medium, and long term. And they are committed, as I've indicated, to getting at least 3 projects done or sort of structured before the end of the year. And they will also have to demonstrate some level of commitment from the private sector. Here's an element which needs to be addressed, and that is what can they do to attract Ukrainian entrepreneurs into this business? The group that I work, Velta, is unique because they built their company with their own hands. They didn't take it or privatize it, or they weren't given the company by the government. And that kind of entrepreneurial spirit and culture is what will help Ukraine develop these other assets, these other minerals. And so the government of Ukraine can take this as an opportunity to continue to dismantle oligarchic structures within the Ukraine economy and make room for entrepreneurs. That is the most important sort of uh, element that they could provide at this stage, because entrepreneurs will solve these problems if they're given the tools and resources to do it.
Yeah. Well, that's a very big homework, then, isn't it?
Yes, it is, except, this is what the revolution of dignity was about, right? This was a revolution for and on behalf of entrepreneurs whose core demand is that they be able to operate to create wealth free from corruption.
Well, Secretary Murray, thank you very much for this. This is fascinating. I'll be watching this interview to learn more
Well, I
about
hope
physics.
I enjoyed it very much, and thank you for your good questions and congratulations on your new enterprise.
Thank you very much.